Welcome to Truth Behind History. The stories are real, the impact is lasting. Today, we're diving into a topic that shapes every corner of our modern lives, money. But not just money as you know it. We're going way back, to a time before central banks, fiat currency, or digital ledgers, to explore how money first emerged. And here's the twist, no one invented it. There was no grand committee, no king's decree. It simply happened, naturally. So what did early civilizations use? Gold, silver, salt, even shells. These weren't just shiny trinkets or pretty rocks. They had intrinsic value. You couldn't just wish gold into existence, and that made it trustworthy. Everyone knew what it was, everyone agreed it was worth something, and you couldn't fake it. This kind of decentralized commodity money was born from necessity and cooperation, not from a central authority. Now, let's fast forward to the medieval period. Long before central banks ever stamped a note, traders and merchants were already innovating. Private banking families extended credit. Bills of exchange let merchants send money across countries without hauling bags of coins. It was messy, yes, but it worked remarkably well. In fact, trade expanded, trust networks grew, and no central planner was needed to coordinate it all. And perhaps the most fascinating part? These early, decentralized systems weren't chaotic, they were stable. Historical records show that they preserved purchasing power across generations. Imagine a system where the money in your pocket is still valuable 50 years from now. That was reality for centuries. So the big question is this: if people once built sound money systems without a central bank, what changed? And more importantly, why? Let's zoom in on a pivotal moment in history, when money stopped being a bottom-up phenomenon and became, well, centralized. The year was 1694. England was knee-deep in a costly war with France. And war, as it turns out, is very, very expensive. Soldiers need pay, weapons need to be built, and kings? Kings don't like running out of gold. So, a clever solution emerged, the founding of the Bank of England. Not to help farmers or expand trade routes, but to fund the war. This wasn't just banking, this was war financing wrapped in legal robes. For the first time, the state created an institution whose main job was to funnel money into government hands. Finance and political power were officially married. Now, once the state got a taste for this kind of financial leverage, it didn't stop. National banks began springing up, not to serve individuals, but to manage government debt. These institutions helped formalize state control over the entire monetary system. Suddenly, money wasn't just a medium of exchange, it became a tool of policy, of control. And here's the key turning point: private credit systems, flexible, competitive, decentralized, gave way to a legal monopoly on issuing money. What had once been a diverse, organic marketplace of money became a one-size-fits-all model, determined by law, backed by force, and increasingly removed from the people it was supposed to serve. It was no longer about trust between individuals. It was now about mandates, and mandates tend to grow. The year is 1907. The US financial system is teetering on the edge. Panic spreads, markets crash, and trust evaporates overnight. Banks fail, and ordinary people rush to withdraw their life savings, only to find the vaults empty. But here's where it gets interesting. Who steps in to restore order? Not the government, not a central authority. It was a private citizen, J.P. Morgan. Yes, the banker. He gathered other financiers, pooled their money, and personally orchestrated the rescue of America's financial system. Now, that might sound like heroism, or a red flag, because if one man had that much power, what happens when he's gone? This crisis exposed a vulnerability. The system was built on voluntary networks, but without a formal safety net, instability could spiral. So, in 1913, Congress passed the Federal Reserve Act, creating a central bank that would control liquidity and issue currency. It was marketed as a stabilizer, a neutral referee in the chaotic world of money. But ask yourself, does centralizing power ever come without trade-offs? The Fed wasn't just a lender, it became the institutional gatekeeper of money itself. And here's the catch: the Fed was built on a story, a narrative, that the only way to prevent disaster was central authority. Crisis became the justification, and once a system adopts fear as its fuel, the engine rarely turns off. If war gave birth to central banking, then total war turned it into a full-grown giant. When World War I broke out, the financial demands were unlike anything the world had seen. To fund the endless stream of bullets, boots, and bodies, governments made a critical decision: they suspended the gold standard. Why? Because gold limits how much money you can print, and war doesn't like limits. So central banks began printing, not just a little, but a lot. Mountains of paper currency flooded economies. And while this kept the war machine running, it came at a cost, an invisible tax called inflation. Nowhere was this more catastrophic than in post-war Germany. To pay reparations after World War I, the Weimar Republic cranked up the printing presses. The result? Hyperinflation. People needed wheelbarrows of money to buy a loaf of bread. Life savings evaporated. And in the ruins of that monetary collapse, seeds of extremism were planted. World War II only deepened the pattern. Central banks and treasuries fused into a single wartime engine. Economic planning, rationing, and coordinated spending blurred the line between market and state. The money printer became a battlefield weapon, silent but decisive. And through it all, money became less of a neutral tool and more of a lever, a mechanism for shaping outcomes, directing resources, and, intentionally or not, shifting power from individuals to institutions. By the mid-20th century, the world was exhausted from war, but ready to rebuild. In 1944, global leaders met in Bretton Woods to create a new financial order. Their idea? Peg all major currencies to the US dollar, and peg the dollar to gold. A clever middle ground. You didn't need gold in your wallet, but it still anchored the system in something real. But then came the pressure. The US government started spending far beyond its means, on wars, on welfare, on worldwide influence. Dollars were printed, and countries holding those dollars started asking, wait, can we still trade this in for gold? In 1971, President Richard Nixon gave the answer, no. In what's now called the Nixon shock, he closed the gold window, ending convertibility. Just like that, the world shifted from a gold-based system to a fiat system, currency backed by nothing but government decree. This was more than a technical tweak. It was a fundamental transformation. For the first time in modern history, every major currency on Earth was floating, untethered. Central banks could now create money without limit, and that meant the rules had changed. From that point forward, the value of money wasn't grounded in nature or scarcity, it was shaped by policy, confidence, and often, illusion. And when money loses its anchor, what keeps it from drifting? When money can be created out of thin air, the rules of the game start to bend. And the first thing that warps? Incentives. Think about it. If a government knows it can spend today and print tomorrow, what's the incentive to be responsible? Why balance a budget when you can inflate your way out of it? The same goes for corporations. If they know the central bank will bail out too big to fail institutions, why not take bigger risks? If things go wrong, someone else picks up the tab. That's what economists call moral hazard. It's when people are shielded from the consequences of their actions, and as a result, they act recklessly. Sound familiar? From housing bubbles to banking collapses, we've seen this pattern repeat again and again. Now zoom out. What does this do to a society? If savers get punished with low interest rates, if debt is rewarded more than discipline, if market signals are constantly distorted by interventions, then who really benefits? These aren't just economic glitches. They are structural shifts. They discourage personal responsibility. They weaken the link between effort and outcome. And over time, they erode the foundations of trust, both in money and in each other. It's not just about inflation. It's about the subtle reshaping of human behavior through policies most people never voted on and can't opt out of. Let's fast forward to the modern era, an age defined by crisis and the response to crisis. In 2008, the global economy fell off a cliff. Banks collapsed, housing markets imploded, and once again, central banks stepped in with promises of stability. Trillions of dollars were injected into the system through bailouts and quantitative easing. But here's the question. Did we solve the problem, or just paper over it? By removing the natural consequences of risky behavior, the system became even more fragile. Easy money propped up zombie corporations, fueled speculative bubbles, and widened the wealth gap. Meanwhile, regular people were left wondering why their wages stayed flat while asset prices soared. Then came 2020. COVID hit, the global economy shut down, and central banks didn't hesitate. They unleashed even more liquidity, faster than ever before. Governments sent out stimulus checks, central banks bought up debt, and interest rates were slashed to near zero. Again, but something new entered the conversation: central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. Now, on the surface, these sound futuristic, efficient, convenient. But let's think a step deeper. A fully digital, programmable currency issued by a central authority means every transaction can be tracked, limited, or even reversed. That's not just money, that's power. Modern central banking has moved beyond printing money, it's shaping the architecture of control. And with every crisis, that architecture expands. The tools get sharper, and the public, more dependent. So where do we go from here? If the central bank model creates instability, distortion, and control, is there a better way? Well, history doesn't just warn, it also whispers alternatives. Before the rise of centralized banking, there was free banking. In the 1800s, some countries experimented with decentralized systems where private banks issued their own notes, backed by real reserves. It wasn't perfect, but it was competitive. If a bank inflated too much or lost trust, it failed. There was accountability, and in some cases, remarkable stability. Then there's gold. For centuries, gold served as the people's money. You couldn't print more of it. You had to earn it, mine it, trade for it. It had weight, literally and metaphorically. And while it lacked the convenience of modern payments, it had something today's systems often lack: discipline. And now, in the digital age, something new has emerged: Bitcoin. Not controlled by any state, not tied to any central authority, governed by code, capped in supply, and verified through a decentralized network. For some, it's the digital gold of our era. For others, it's a lifeline out of systems they no longer trust. These alternatives raise a radical idea that maybe money doesn't need to be managed. Maybe it can emerge, like language or culture, from voluntary exchange and mutual interest. They don't promise perfection, but they restore something that's been quietly missing: choice. Let's pause and ask the deeper questions, the ones we're often too distracted or too afraid to ask. Who really benefits when money can be created at will? Who gains when the cost of living rises faster than wages, while asset prices skyrocket? Who gets bailed out, and who gets left behind? These aren't just economic questions, they're moral ones. Because money isn't neutral. It shapes how we live, how we plan, how we dream. When a small group decides how much money exists, where it flows, and who gets access to credit, it shapes the entire structure of opportunity and control. We're told inflation is natural, but natural for whom? We're told stimulus is necessary, but necessary for what? We're told central banks are independent, but independent from whom? And then there's the cultural cost. When money is untethered, not just from gold but from consequence, what happens to trust, to responsibility, to the belief that hard work leads to stability? These systems were designed in response to crisis. But after decades of manipulation, distortion, and consolidation, are they still serving us? Or have we become servants to them? It's not just about policy, it's about purpose. What kind of society do we want to build? And what kind of money will support it? So, what have we learned? Money is more than currency. It's a mirror of power, a reflection of who makes the rules and who pays the price. From gold coins to digital tokens, from merchant notes to central bank mandates, the story of money is the story of control. But here's the thing: you don't have to accept that story at face value. You can question it. You can study the systems, trace the incentives, and follow the patterns. You can ask, does this system truly serve freedom, or just efficiency, stability, or submission? And most of all, what alternatives are possible when we stop assuming the status quo is permanent? Thanks for watching Truth Behind History. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what surprised you most, or what you'd like us to explore next. And if you want to go deeper, check out my book, History They Tried to Erase. The link's in the description. This channel is for people who want more than surface-level history, who want to understand the hidden forces shaping our world. If that's you, we've got a lot more to uncover together. See you in the next one.